battles for ancient kingdoms are nothing compared to the battles of a classroom. Awakening from magical stasis after 1,000 years, the Dark Lord Leonis suddenly finds himself in the body of a 10-year-old boy. He quickly meets Roselia, a girl confronting the voids, creatures that have nearly exterminated humanity. Determined to uncover the mysteries of this strange new era, Leonis enrolls in Excalibur Academy, a school that trains students to fight back against these enigmatic monsters. Could the voids hold some connection to Leonis' past? Two girls enter a castle ruin on a mission to investigate voids. They are advised only to engage in self-defense combat. They walk into the castle floor while holding their void detectors. Regina, a girl with twin tails, tells Celia to be careful due to how difficult their return trip alone would be. Celia informs her of how important it is for them to fulfill their mission. They freak out on seeing a collapsed statue and wonder if there's a king buried somewhere. They arrive at a door and wonder how to open it. Regina pushes the door, but it doesn't open. Celia sees an ancient text and decides to analyze it. Regina, being impatient, asks if it'll take a while and leaves Celia after getting her confirmation. Celia touches the scribbled rune and the door opens. She brings out a gun and walks into the room carefully. The room lights up and she sees a huge crystal at the end. On getting there, her detector stops working. Celia looks closely and sees a figure inside the crystal. She tries breaking it with her gun to help the person trapped inside. Leonis remembers finding Roselia in the wilderness after countless searches. Roselia reminds him of a request she told him. He is to find her vessel of power, which will appear as a human child in the next millennia. Leonis tries speaking to her, but she flies off. Leonis awakes in the body of a child in the crystal. He wonders what's making the noise he is hearing and sees a girl pointing and firing an object at the crystal he is in. He wonders how she got into the mausoleum and uses a language analysis spell to get to translate what the girl is saying. Leonis picks out a few words but concludes that she's a robber. He breaks the crystal and it sends her flying backwards. Leonis walks towards the fallen girl and notices her to be as beautiful as elves. He sees she's a human. He remembers he is to finish her off for breaking in and disturbing his sleep. Celia wakes up and looks at him, asking him what a child like him is doing there. Leonis looks at himself via a crystal and sees that he is a child. He is confused and wonders if the ritual has failed. He stares at his small form and sees that he has returned to the form when he was addressed as Leonis the hero. Celia asks him how he got trapped in the crystal. She examines him and hugs him, while concluding that the shock of the explosion must have made him lose his memories. She treats him like a little brother and hugs him tightly. After some time, Celia shares her rations with him. Leonis felt insulted by her behavior earlier, but plans to leave her due to sharing her food with him. Celia introduces herself to him as Roselia Ray Crystalia, a swordswoman in training and a member of the 18th Platoon at the 7th Assault Garden's Excalibur Academy. She is 15 years old. Leonis doesn't understand a thing she says apart from her name and age. She asks him of his age, and he introduces himself as Leonis Magnus. She smiles and asks him about his age. Leonis tells her he is 10 years old. Celia asks him if a void kidnapped him, and he doesn't understand what she said. Celia is surprised and concludes that Leo suffers from amnesia. Regina checks around the ruins and suddenly her detector goes off. She checks around and sees a monster. Regina activates her holy sword and it transforms into a cannon. Celia explains voids are enemies of humanity that appeared in their world 64 years ago. She tells him that she came there to investigate the voids. Leonis asks her the year they are. She uses a different calendar system to reply to him. Celia says they are in the 64th year in the unified human calendar. Regina informs Celia through her transponder about the detection of a colossal void. The walls around the castle start to fall, and Celia uses her body to protect Leonis. Leonis gets a strange feeling when he gets hugged by her. A void breaks into the mausoleum, and Leo wonders what it is. Celia fires her gun at the monster, but it is ineffective. Leo tries to attack the monster, but he trips. He notes his body to be too small. Regina enters and uses her weapon to push the void away. She uses a technique called Dragon Blast with her weapon and fires it at the void, but the monster still stands. Regina tells them to head for the exit while she handles the monster. Celia holds Leo by the hand and they run for the exit. As they head towards the exit, Leo thinks about slaughtering the voids in the castle, but thinks about getting more information from Celia. A void drops and blocks their path, and Celia notes it to be a wyvern class. Celia pushes Leo back and brings out his sword. He gets impatient and tries to use his magic on it, but Celia sees the void about to attack Leo and rushes to intercept it. She gets hit in the process. Leo watches her bleed out as she tells him to run away. He holds her hand and watches her pass out. He calls her foolish for thinking he couldn't withstand the void's attack. Leo recalls Roselia defeating him and asking him to be hers. He gets mad at the fact that the void killed the girl he let live to obtain information from. Other voids appear and attack Leo, but but barriers prevent them from hitting him. He turns towards them and brings out his staff. Leonis uses a high-level gravity spell on one of the voids and presses it to the ground, thereby killing it. Another climbs on Leo's barrier, and he slaughters it with magic. Leo catches the third one, which is trying to escape, and burns it with magic. He sees the bones of the void he compressed with gravity, and realizes that his powers have been reduced to 1/3 of his prime. Leo goes over to Celia and uses recovery magic on her, hereby bringing her back to life. Regina finally defeats the void in the mausoleum and speaks to Celia through her transponder. Celia wakes up and doesn't understand how she's alive. Leo tells her that he used sorcery to heal her injuries, but Celia concludes it to be a sword's power. She tells Leo about her school that has documented cases of holy swords with healing spells. Leo asks her what holy swords are, and she explains that they are powers that are worse in humans to fight the voids. Celia explains that children started developing abilities decades ago, and the abilities took the shape of weapons. Hence, it was classified as holy sword. Leo asks about Regina's power, and Celia calls Regina's holy sword the Drag Howl. Celia suspects the holy sword to embody the personality of their wielder. She informs Leo that she hasn't been blessed with a holy sword yet, and Leo sees it to be why she uses a magical device to fight. Regina meets up with them and confirms Celia's health. She asked if they fought a void. Celia turned to Leo and asked about the void that attacked her earlier. Leo lies to her that he got scared, and when he looks up, the void is gone. They believe his lie due to how unexplainable voids behave. They leave the castle ruins, and Regina asks Celia if she figured out who Leo is. She tells Regina that Void kidnapped Leo, and he suffers from amnesia. Celia takes Leo on her motorcycle, and they drive off. Regina introduces herself to Leo as Celia's maid. Regina teases Leo as they leave the vicinity. Leo sees the city not far away, and asks Celia. She tells him that it's humanity's last stronghold, built to resist the voids. She calls it the 7th Assault Garden. Leo stares and wonders how the future is so different from his era. 6 years ago, voids escaped from another dimension and attacked the city. Celia and Regina hug themselves due to how terrified they are. Celia tries to reassure Regina, but the building they are in starts trembling. Celia says a lot of things while clasping Regina's hand to get her worries off her mind. Their fortress receives a huge hit, and Celia starts to worry. She says her dad, mom, and elder sister have never lost against the voids. Regina holds her back to prevent her from running off to fight the monsters. After the battle, Regina steps outside and sees the whole place devastated. She cries and apologizes to Regina for thinking everywhere will be okay. Presently, Regina and Celia ride their bikes into the 7th Assault Garden. Leo asks the girls if the whole of the 7th Assault Garden is a stronghold, and they confirm. Celia says it also has towns where they live. She vows not to lie again. Inside the Assault Garden, Leo is amazed at how astonishing it looks. Regina corrects him about the Assault Garden being a megafloat and not an island. Celia reports their investigation. She informs the Assault Garden about Leo, a refugee she picked up during her mission, and how he seems to possess a holy sword. Regina is surprised that Leo has awakened his holy sword power. Celia points out that Leo healed her wound. He asks the girls why he is called a refugee, and they explain to him that he'll be referred to as one until he regains his memories. Celia calls refugees people who have lost their homes due to the voids. She assures Leo that he'll stay with them at the Excalibur Academy dorm. She explains the academy to be a place where kids with holy sword are obligated to enroll. Leo agrees with them, and Celia says she'll handle all the paperwork. Regina leaves them to do some shopping. Celia tells Leo about how outsiders have to enter the door at the right of the Assault Garden to undergo an examination. He tells her he'll be fine to take the exam alone, and Celia drives to the other side of the Assault Garden to wait for him. Leo enters a restroom and complains about how things are. He planned to rebuild his demonic army and bring humanity to its knees. He complains about how civilizations have advanced, the presence of the void monsters, and is being stuck in the body of a child. Leo summons Blackus and Sherry, and they appear before him. Blackus asks him how he ended up in a child's body, and Leo says the reincarnation went wrong and he is back in his human form from the old days. Blackus doesn't recognize his human form because he only met Leo when he was the Demon Lord. Sherry stares at Leo and calls him adorable, but he finds it insulting. He tells them that he has an errand for them. Leo informs them about the mobile fortress they are on, which was built by the humans. He calls it the 7th and believes 6 others should exist. He asks his underlings to investigate the humans, but warns them not to use sorcery since it'll draw attention. Sherry asks Leo what he'll be doing, and he tells her that he'll be infiltrating the humans' military education facility. Sherry considers Leo to be mooching off the humans, so she looks displeased. She tells him that she wants to be the one taking care of him, especially in his current cute form. Leo asks her for what we said, but she denies saying anything. He sends them forth and heads towards the room to the right. On entering the room, He is sterilized and scanned. Leo moves forward and an alarm goes off. He suppresses his mana and he is allowed out of the room. On getting out, he is handed over an ID card from a machine. Celia takes the card and takes a picture of it. She tells him that she has all the requirements needed to enroll him at the academy. Leo thinks about fooling the academy, and Celia tells him not to look worried since the enrollment is just a formality. They walk towards the bike, while Celia tells him that she'd like to give him a tour around the Excalibur Academy. Celia drives towards the academy, and Leo sees how peaceful the people in the town are. He asks her about it, and she says the 7th Assault Garden prevents the Voids from entering its fortress, while the humans with holy swords are on the front line battling the Voids. She shows Leo a skyscraper in front of them and calls it the Excalibur Academy. They get to the academy, and Celia calls it the cornerstone of the city, where their military affairs are handled. Leonis notes the place to be bigger than his castle. They take a stroll around the environment, and Celia pinpoints what each place is. Leo asks her if all the facilities he has seen make up the academy, but she says he has only seen a fraction. Celia lists some other facilities and Leo asks about them. He notes the facility not to be a conventional military one. Celia shows him a building and tells Leo that he'll be interviewed there the following day concerning his holy sword. Celia bends and holds her head, and it causes Leo to ask her what's wrong. She says it's nothing and tells him that she'll need to get back to training as soon as she takes a little break at the dorms. She tells him that she wants to do whatever it takes to get her holy sword as soon as possible. As they walk back to their dorms, Leo wonders why Celia is enrolled at the academy since she doesn't have a holy sword. Some girls see Leo, and one of them teases the other of the possibility of him being a demon lord. Leo asks Celia if the students of the academy are all girls, but she tells him that the males and females are evenly split. A male student and his entourage walk up to Roselia and call out to her. Roselia looks displeased and calls him Musel Rhodes. Leo sees her look and watches Rhodes as he taunts Celia. He tells her to join his platoon, but she refuses. Rhodes sees Leo behind Celia and asks her about him, but she tells him it's none of his business. He makes fun of her, and she tells him that Leo has a holy sword. Rhodes doesn't believe her. Instead, he tells her to join his platoon to risk being expelled. He says the reason she has lasted this long is because her family produced people with holy swords. Leo realizes that Celia is in the school because her lineage brought about high expectations. Rhodes asks Celia to join his toy collection while referring to the girls around him. Celia rejects his offer and tries walking away, but he grabs her by the hair. Leo stares daggers at him and intimidates Rhodes with magic. Rhodes falls to the ground, and he whispers to Rhodes like he is checking up on him. Leo threatens Rhodes not to come close to Celia, and it makes Rhodes summon a knife. A girl stops Rhodes and informs him that the use of holy swords in personal fights is strictly prohibited. She tells him to leave the area since he is close to the female dorm, or else she'll record his actions and send it to the administrative bureau. Rhodes leaves angrily while threatening the girl. Leo is glad that he didn't expose himself due to Rhodes's interaction with him. Celia thanked the girl while referring to her as Senior Fine. She walks to Leo and bends down while speaking to him. Fine introduces herself as Elfine Filet, a member of Celia's platoon who's in charge of data analysis. Leo looks at the floating orbs that belong to Elfine and watches as she uses them to take his measurements. Elfine notices the bloodstain on Celia's uniform and apologizes for not being able to follow her to the mission. Celia tells her she's fine and says Leo healed her injuries. Elfine tells Celia about the strange magical reaction picked up by her sensors in their current area and how she spent time reporting the data at the administrative bureau. Celia feels dizzy and she rests on a tree. Leonis notes that she's almost dry. They walk to Celia's dorm, and Leo sees how old it is compared to the rest. He asks her about it, and she says the living quarters they are assigned to depend on the achievement of their platoon. A platoon is a combat unit that comprises Holy Swords members. She checks Regina's room and sees her fast asleep with the groceries she bought beside her. As Celia and Leo head upstairs, she tells Leo that calling upon the power of a Holy Sword takes a lot out of the user. Leo asks if any of the rooms have locks, but Celia says they do not due to how old they are. She takes Leo to her room, and Leo asks her if it's alright for him to stay with them, and she agrees. Celia calls him a child and shows him the bathroom. Leo removes his robe to take his bath, but Celia asks him if he'll be joining her platoon if he passes the interview on the following day. Leo operates the shower and wonders what magic principle it works on. He picks a soap and tries it on his head. Celia enters the bathroom unclad and corrects him to use shampoo for his hair rather than soap. Leo feels embarrassed, and Celia tells him not to be. She washes his hair for him and talks about him joining their platoon if he wishes. She says it'd be disadvantageous for him since she has yet to awaken her holy sword. Leo sees her as an honest person, but tells her not to endanger herself since she hasn't awakened. Celia disagrees and says she wants to fight rather than be protected. She falls to the ground and collapses. Leo touches her thigh and a crest appears on it. Her eyes glow red and she tries biting his neck to suck his blood. Celia asks him why she did that, and he confesses to her about not being able to revive a dead soul. She doesn't understand him, but he says plainly to her that Roselia Ray Crystalia is dead. 2 years ago, Celia battled multiple bots in the training room. Regina watches her fall and appears worried. Celia believes her holy sword to manifest in the shape of a sword. Rhodes enters the training room and turns off the computer. He calls it pointless and asks Celia to join his platoon. Regina brings out a gun and uses it to scare Rhodes off. He tells her about how using the holy swords in private is prohibited. Regina tries lifting Celia's mood, but fails. She wonders if she'll ever get a holy sword. Currently, Leo drops Celia on her bed and watches over her. The next morning, Celia wakes up and sees Leo by her side. He explains to her about how he used sorcery to bring her into the room. Celia asks him who he is, and he says he is the reincarnation of an ancient sorcerer. He says he used a skill and calls her his most prestigious undead. He calls her a vampire queen. Celia listens to his explanation and accepts that she's an undead. Celia shares a story about her past of her town being attacked by voids. She calls the large-scale attack a stampede. Celia says she lost all her family members who partook in that war. She explains that the academy took her and Regina in. Celia asks if she can still get a holy sword after being undead, but Leone says he isn't sure. He says he knows she is stronger than before. Celia guesses Leo hasn't eaten since last night and says it isn't good for him. Leo in his school uniform stands by Celia in the cafeteria. He is asked which food he will take, and he picks pastry due to not being familiar with the menu. Celia scolds him and says he should eat something with plenty of nutrients. Leo teases her for being an undead, and she feels sad. He recalls voluntarily becoming an undead for Roselia and considers Celia's case to be involuntary. Leo brings out a gold coin and says he'll pay for their food. He believes the worth of the coin to be able to buy the restaurant. Celia corrects him by saying forged silver is more valuable than gold coins in the assault garden. She offers to buy him food. At the end of the room, they see a blue-haired girl who owes a debt to 2 people being confronted by them. The guys try to strip her off her clothes, but she deals with them with her bokuto. Leo sees how skillful she is with the katana. The girl promises to have the guy's money ready the following week. Celia goes to meet her and asks who the men are. She calls her Sakuya. Sakuya explains the men to be bouncers from the casino she went to last night. She tells Celia that she went to the casino to get rich after her makeup paper the previous day, but she ended up being flat broke. Sakuya sees Leo with a gold coin and asks Celia about him. Celia tells Leo that Sakuya is their platoon's vanguard. Leo shakes Sakuya's hand and confirms her to be a swordsperson. They have their meal, and Leo notices Sakuya's uniform to be different. She tells him that she's putting on the traditional clothes from her hometown, Uran, a memento of her older sister. She says her village was wiped out by voids, and she has dedicated herself to learning how to kill them. Some students come to meet her and complain about how she owes them. Sakuya promises to pay the following week. Celia sees why she fails her exams because she's addicted to gambling. Leo goes to take the inquiry lessons in the training room. The woman in charge asks him to bring his holy sword, and he brings out his staff. She suspects him to play the role of a support in a platoon, so she tries programming the bots he is to face. Leo takes them all out, and it surprises everyone in the room. Rhodes walks in and says he'd like to go against Leo. Leo agrees, and Rhodes and his minions bring out their holy swords. Celia sees how unfair the matchup is, so she decides to join Leo. Rhodes drops a condition of having her join his platoon if she loses to him. Leo says Rhodes shouldn't mess with Celia if he wins the matchup. Celia worries, but Leo reassures her that they'll win. Celia asks for a sword and gets ready to engage in battle. The match starts, and Celia alone battles 2 of the minions, while Leo binds one of them with magic from his staff. He notes Celia to be stronger due to her being a vampire. She defeats his minions and tries attacking Rhodes. Rhodes uses his holy sword ability, called Force. He knocks off her weapon and halts her movement. Rhodes walks off to Leo, who binds one of Rhodes's minions. Regina rushes to the venue to watch the match. She sees Rhodes's team going up against Leo and Celia. Celia, who is bound to a place, struggles and tries using her will to break forth. A holy weapon draws out, and she breaks free from Rhodes' command. Celia dashes towards Rhodes and uses her longsword to break his weapon, hereby winning the bet. Celia thanks Leo in her dorm, but he tells her not to, since she is his minion. She wonders what he means, but he calls himself her master. Celia calls herself his big sister and vows to protect him. She asks him to make her stronger, and he agrees. The dorm celebrates Celia's holy sword awakening and Leo's induction into their platoon. They have a feast, and Leo is told that Regina prepared it. Sakuya and Elfine are present at the event as well. They come up with names for Celia's sword but she tells them that she'll name it after wielding its true potential. Elphine tells Leo to drop by her room to update his biodata. Sakuya wonders where Leo will be staying, since there isn't any extra room. The girls volunteer their rooms, but Celia decided to gatekeep Leo. They wonder why she wants him to stay with her so badly, but Leo backs her up and says he feels comfortable with her, and she's the one who found him. Leo goes to Elphine's room and watches as she uses her orbs, called the Eye of the Witch, to analyze him. She tells him of how she lost some of her abilities after watching 2 of her friends get killed by voids in one of her missions. She finishes up with Leo. He sees a map and asks her for it. Leo goes back to Celia's room and views the map on the tablet. Celia has her bath, so he uses the opportunity to go through a map on a tablet. He spots the location where his army and Archael fought and sees the correlation it has to do with the void. Leo calls out Blackus and asks it for everything it has learned so far through telepathy. The Black Wolf explains to Leo about how the whole Assault Garden's core is equipped with an enormous mana crystal. Leo wonders if it's the same principle as the one the Goblin Lord used to power his castle. Leo tells Blackus to continue his investigation. He feels it'll be a valuable asset to him once he uncovers how the mana crystal works. As soon as Blackus leaves, Sherry shows up and offers Leo donuts. She brings out some other food items and informs Leo about how no one in the city knows about him. Sherry asks Leo if he managed to turn Celia into his minion, and he admits doing so. Sherry pouts and gets jealous, but Leo doesn't understand her. He tells her that Celia has been made into a high-class vampire. Celia steps out of the bathroom and Sherry retreats into his shadow immediately. Deep in the sea, divers check for signs of void outbreaks, but report to each other about not noticing any. They expand their target and see a large vine being attached to a chain. The vine has 2 glowing eyes, and it mentions the name Leonis while attacking the divers. Holy God Calendar Year 432, Sidon Wastelands. The humans complain about being short-staffed in the quarry and cannot afford to have a gargoyle terrorizing them. Leonis Shalto, age 16, is regarded as the great hero of the Holy Sword. He walks alongside one of the men, and the man thanks him for going with them. Leonie says he is merely obeying the king. He talks about wanting to take one of the monsters for training. The man takes Leonis to a quarry, and he wonders where the monster he talked about is. Leonis gets ambushed and impaled by multiple men. They scoff at him and are annoyed by the fact that he isn't a money-oriented person. He is left there to die. Roselia walks him and communicates with him through telepathy. She asks him to be hers and says she's interested in him. Leonis wakes up from his dream and remembers Roselia. He says it's his mission to raise an army for Roselia. As soon as he reincarnates, he feels a pain in his neck, and it indicates bite marks from Celia. Leonis goes to Celia, who is fast asleep. He commands her to rise, and she is shocked at how she is woken up. Leonis shows her a crest of authority on the back of his palm. He tells her that he can use it to force obedience on his minions. She gets worried and asks him if he can compel her into doing naughty stuff, but he says he won't do that. He questions her about sucking his blood while he was asleep, and she admits to doing so. Leo tells her she's free to suck his blood, but she should tell him before doing so. Celia apologizes, but she receives a phone call from Elphine. Elphine informs her of the strategic meeting. They are called for despite being on a day off. She says she'll inform Celia in case any news comes up. Celia tells Leo that she has a free day, so he should train her. At the administrative bureau, the results of the previous night's expenditure are discussed. The acting commander and the other administrators wonder how the 13th platoon sent on a mission gets eliminated. One of the researchers notes that void activity was detected immediately after they lost the signals from the platoon members. She notes that the signal only lasted for 3 seconds. The commanders say it's too quick for the voids to disappear. The researcher shows them an image taken by one of the platoon members before he got wiped out. They check the image and see a type of tree rooted to the anchor of a ship. They wonder if it's a new void. The researcher suspects it to be a void lord. They wonder if a stampede may likely occur and come up with strategies to counter it. Celia trains at the facility, and Leo watches her. He sees her sword skills and asks her if she was ever taught. Celia says she trained with her family when she was little, but learned on her own to get to the Excalibur Academy. She admits not to be close to Sakuya in sword skills. Leo says a vampire's queen's enormous mana supply is where her true potential lies. He says he'll teach her sorcery when the time comes. He says the best thing for her is to be able to harness her sword skills and use her mana to strengthen her physique, thereby turning her into a spellblade. He summons a few undead soldiers and asks her to go wild. Celia fights for a long while before Leo calls off her training. He asks her if she wants to top up her mana supply, but she says she's okay, and she's starting to adjust to her body. Celia says she'd like to treat Leo to lunch at a great restaurant as a method of thanking him. He refuses at first, but his tummy growls, and it embarrasses him. Elphine uses one of her orbs to watch a new platoon that is being sent to investigate the tree. Sakuya returns from the casino and mentions how long it has been since she won. She sees Blackus outside her dorm and goes to play with it. Sakuya ties a scarf around the dog and gives it a name. She enters the dorm and goes to Elfine's room, who is being served a treat from Regina. She informs them about the dog and the name she gave it. They look at her like she's a lost cause for wanting to own a stray dog. Sakuya sits and takes a treat from Regina. Regina sees Elfine in her uniform and asks her about it since they are on their day off. She tells Regina that she can be called upon at any moment. Regina sees Elfine working and notes she is always busy during their days off. She looks at Sakuya and sees her sleeping. Celia rides Leo around the town, and he sees how advanced humanity has gone. Sherry is assigned to work in a donut shop Celia takes Leo to. She messes up her preparation of dough and is sent to sweep the front of the donut shop. Sherry sees Celia as she buys donuts for her master and drives off with him. She gets mad due to how lenient Leo is with his minion. Celia arrives with Leo in front of the restaurant. He sees a lot of kids running out of the building to welcome Celia. She explains to him that the restaurant is home to a lot of children and she works part-time there. Leo realizes that the children are orphans, just like him. They go into the restaurant and the children whine at Celia for not visiting them in a while. The orphanage's caretaker comes down and speaks to Celia. She asks Celia about Leo, and Celia introduces him as the boy she found outside the assault garden. She tells them that Leo has a holy sword. The children surround Leo after learning that he has a holy sword. Celia sees how uncomfortable Leo is, so she tells them about the donuts she bought for them, and they leave him for her. Leo realizes the orphanage is what Celia is fighting for. He looks sad due to not having a place for him to protect anymore. The platoon was sent to check in on the tree on the giant anchor. They reach the chains of the anchor and do not see any sign of it. They suspect the tree to have crystallized. The 7th assault garden vibrates, and some of the people inside notice. 2 men go to check in their food supplies, and they notice the storeroom to be covered in vines. Leo and the orphans eat their meal as the outer city walls vibrate. Holy God calendar, year 428. Ragna's kingdom, a walled city near the border. A town is attacked by ogres. Tyrez, the hero of resurrection, agrees with Arakiel to destroy the monsters in one fell swoop. They plan on killing everyone present and resurrecting them. Leonis destroys the spell created by Arakiel and tells the heroes that he doesn't like their idea. He jumps into the town and defeats all the ogres single-handedly. The 2 heroes note Leonis to be a dangerous hero, and they believe his powers will put him in trouble along the line. Currently, the Vine infiltrates the 7th Assault Garden. At the Administrative Bureau, the commanders note the Vine to have disappeared and conclude it to be a void. They wonder where the void is. Elfine from the 18th platoon requests to speak with them and drop her data records concerning the void. She analyzes the vibrations and notes the void to be present in a particular area of the assault garden. The commanders do not believe it to be possible, but one of the researchers says it is highly likely that the void slipped through the cracks that allow the anchor into the megafloat. They wonder how it didn't get detected, and it is suggested that it's possible the void lower at its mana level to bypass the threshold. One of the commanders does not believe the void to be that intelligent, so he voices out his opinion. Elfini asks him if the crystal of the void has been spotted, and none of them could answer. The commanders urge the researchers to track the movement of the monster immediately. Regina notes that she can't get in touch with Celia. Elfine asks for Celia's location and sends one of her Eye of the Witch drones there. She hopes there aren't many voids invading the city and tells the girls to be ready to move out at a moment of notice. Outside the donut store, the shop owner tries reaching Sherry with his phone, but it doesn't get through. The children eat at the restaurant, and one of the boys addresses Leo badly while asking to see his holy sword. Leo keeps his cool even though he feels uncomfortable. A girl offers him a handkerchief and apologizes on the child's behalf. She blushes and admits that she thinks it's cool that Leo can wield a holy sword. At the Administrative Bureau, the commanders identify the traces of the Vine Void in the underground of the assault garden. They send the Alpha 1 squad to investigate, and it transmits the footage to them. Several vines were shown to be in the storeroom, number 226. The Alpha 1 platoon asks if they are to eliminate the vines, but the vine attacks them, and the Bureau loses footage transmission. The acting commander tries to reach the commander, but it doesn't go due because the intercity communications are down. The Alpha 1 restores their footage and informs the headquarters about the vine retreating. They conclude the vine to be heading for the power plant. Elfine suspects the void to be heading to the power plant to trigger a stampede. The acting commander tells them to protect the power plant at all costs. The commander of the army tells them that he has his men in place and there are defensive systems ready to intercept the void if it enters the power plant. The vines enter the room containing the power plants and the defensive systems kick in. The soldiers and the system shoot the vines, but it manages to come in contact with the power plant. The acting commander takes charge and broadcasts to the others that the 7th Assault Garden will shift into fortress mode. The other commanders are asked to evacuate other civilians and prepare military personnel for a stampede. Leo makes miniature skeletons to stack on each other to entertain the kids, but they get the chills. The lights in the assault garden go out, and an alarm blares throughout the fortress. Celia and Leo run outside and see the garden entering a fortress mode. They see hordes of voids heading towards the fortress. The platoons are stationed outside, while the civilians are evacuated into a bunker. A command is given to the platoons to engage in combat with the incoming voids. The defense system of the fortress eliminates a lot of the voids. Sakuya activates her holy sword, Raikare Maru. The other platoon members use their holy swords against the voids and take some of them down. Leo sees how impressive the human weaponry is. Celia tries contacting the other platoon members, but it doesn't go. She goes inside to calm the children. Sherry shows up and speaks to Leo. Leo gives her the command to protect his minions' friends. She pouts due to wanting to protect Leo himself, but she leaves to do her job. Celia opens the door of the restaurant and arranges to take the children to the bunker, but Leo stops her. He says it's too dangerous. They see 4 Wyvern-class voids fly close by. Celia activates her holy sword, and Leo notes that she hasn't gotten to her full potential. He asks her if she's scared to combat the monsters, and she admits so. She summons the courage and eliminates 2 of the voids. Leo brings out his staff and burns the remaining 2 voids. The sky cracks and colossal voids drop down. Different types of voids fall into the assault garden, with some of them destroying the defense system. Leone sees a colossal void heading their way and asks Celia to back him up while he recites a spell to get rid of the monster. Celia cuts down the ogre voids, and Leo finishes his chant. Multiple barrages of fireballs strike the monster, but it doesn't kill it. The colossal dragon void fires its breath at Celia, but she manages to avoid it. Blackus appears from a shadow and bites the dragon on the neck, giving Leonis enough time to complete his gravity spell. Leonis crushes the colossal dragon with the gravity spell, and it amazes Celia. The ground cracks where the dragon was, and it spreads towards Celia. Vines come out from the ground and bind her. It pulls her into the crack. Leo runs to intercept the vine, but Arakail comes out in the form of a vine and calls out to Leonis. Leo sees Arakail and talks back. Holy God, calendar year 434, undead capital of Necrozoa. Leonis walks in with his skeleton soldiers to meet Roselia in the castle. He talks to her about his victory in his recent battle, even though he died twice. He shows her the spoils of war, but she tells him to hold on to it. Leo tells her he recently made a friend, Blackus. Roselia smiles at him and hands him a present. It's his holy sword, but she turns it into a demonic sword. She tells him that he won't be able to draw the sword until certain conditions are met. Currently, Leone speaks to Arakael. He says he didn't expect to see him after 1,000 years. Leo fires a spell at Arakael, but it retreats into the crack with Celia. Leo knows he is being lured, and he accepts to play Arakael's game. Blackus comes out of a shadow and speaks to Leo about not expecting their enemy to be in this millennia. Leo says Arakael looks different from what he once was, and he suspects him to have become a void leader. Leonis believes Roselia to be alive in their world, since Arakael also exists. Blackus points his attention to the children who are outside their house. The black dog wonders why they are outside, since it's still a bit safe for them inside the restaurant. Leone says he is used to being gawked at due to his intimidating power. He walks to the kids, and the girl who handed him the handkerchief earlier thanks him on behalf of everyone for protecting them. The girl asks him to save Roselia. Leo promises to do so, and he erects a barrier around their house and summons some skull soldiers to guard them. Leo walks towards Blackus and sees the dog open the scarf tied to its neck. Leone sees the steak kept in the scarf and asks Blackus if he stole it. Blackus confesses to being given the treat after letting the human pay him back. Linus takes one of the steaks to eat. They hear someone calling out to her through her comm that lies not far from them. Leone speaks to it and informs Elfine, who is behind the call, that Celia has been captured. He asks for Celia's precise location, but Elfine tells him to let the people of other districts handle it. He tells her that no one is within the vicinity and asks her to use her witch eye to look for Celia. Elfine checks Leo and sees how battered his surroundings are. She tries tracing Celia's biosignature and finds her to be located around the heart of the assault garden. She conveys the info to Leo and almost gets attacked by a void, but it is dealt with by Sherry. Sherry goes back to hiding and complains about being worked to the bone by Leonis. She eats her donut and says it is better than working in the donut shop. Leonis rides on Blackus to the heart of the assault garden. On the way, Assault asks him why he sent Sherry to protect the humans. Leonis comes up with an excuse by saying Sherry originally was an assassin, and she is better suited in that role than being a housemaid. Blackus asks him why he casts a protective barrier around the children, and Leonis finally says it is because he has taken a liking to the humans. They get close to the heart, and Leonis destroys a wall before them to create a path. They leap towards the heart of the mega float and see Arakael. Leonis uses flame magic to burn the vines, but Arakael regenerates. He tells Leonis about how he expected him to have perished long ago. Leonis calls him a fool for thinking he had perished. He explains to Arakael that he sealed his soul. Arakael tells him about how their current world is different, and Leonis agrees. He says he plans to rebuild the world along with the empty star. Leonis doesn't know what he means by an empty star. Heads grow out from the vines of Arakael and start singing a chorus. Leonis recognizes them to be the priest from the Sacred Order. Leonis sees Celia, who is tied up close to Arakael's core. He attacks the vines and tries getting close to them, but he is sent backward. Blackus uses flames to protect Leonis from being attacked by the vines. He tells Leonis about how the potency of their sorcery is reduced by a second. Leonis commends Arakael's wisdom for gaining unlimited access to mana and being able to use multiple spells at once. Arakael uses light magic on them, and Leonis gets grazed. He clenches Celia's intercom and tells Blackus about how reckless they are going to be. Celia, who is tied up, thinks of ways to help Leo. She bleeds from where she's tied and tries summoning her sword. Celia tries to use her sword to cut the vines, but her blood acts as a blade and cuts the vines binding her. Leonis throws her intercom at Celia, and it hits her. She grows wings and becomes a vampire queen. Celia cuts through the vines and reaches out to Leonis. She tries to grab him since Blackus has left him alone to recover, but ends up falling. Leo catches her and praises her for achieving her true form. He says all she needed was a little push. The two of them get ready to combat Arakael. Leonis asks Celia to buy him time while he fights Arakael. Celia uses her blood to cut the minions sent their way. Blackus notices Leonis holding his staff and is about to draw his sword. Leonis recalls the conditions put on the sword by Roselia to draw its power. He subjects all the people in the 7th Assault Garden to be his minions and draws out the black blade. Arakael fears the blade but tells Leonis that he cannot change his fate. Leonis says he'll conquer destiny with his own two hands. He uses a secret technique and destroys Arakael. All the voids around disintegrate, and the commanders at the headquarters give their opinions on the matter. One of them believes it to be a stroke of luck that the vine got obliterated as soon as their power plant gave out. The acting commander thanks everyone in the room for their effort and says it's due to them that fortune smiled upon them. Leo and Celia come out from a manhole. They meet up with their platoon members, and they are glad that they are all safe. The 7th Assault Garden goes back to normal from its fortress mode. Leo curses as he feels all his muscles to be sore. He blames it on the sword skills he used that were locked away in the demon's sword by Roselia. He complains of being mana drained. Celia enters his room and hands him a medal. She says it was made by the orphans at the restaurant for him. Leo notes that he claimed mankind to be his underlings. Celia asks Leo for some blood due to using up her mana. He gives her his finger and she takes blood from it. The remaining girls enter the room to check up on Leo. They see Celia and look disdained. Celia explains to them that she is treating his wounds. On a ship in the ocean, a commander speaks to royalty. She says they are headed to the Assault Garden to show appreciation to the holy swordsmen who defended the garden. Leo reports how the 7th Assault Garden is being repaired. He says the man's power plant that has stopped working has made the people use solar panels to produce mana. He says he doesn't understand much about the land he claimed. Leonis walks into a place to meet up with the Bureau, but he sees a spirit owl. The owl denies him access since he didn't submit a request to meet the Bureau. Regina covers his ease from the back and teases him. She tells him that she came to return Dome video software. Regina asks what he is doing at the Bureau, and he says he came to do some research on the ancient language written on the ruins he was trapped in, while claiming that it might help him to get his memory back. Regina meets the owl and uses some kind of trick to let them in. She tells him to keep it a secret when he asks her about it. Leonis finds out that spirits are man-made in the current era. She shows him a segment containing ancient texts, but they receive a text from the Administrative Bureau telling them about Princess Altiris Rael Teresa coming to grace their presence regarding their commendation ceremony. Celia contacts Leo through his phone and asks if they can grab lunch. He tells her he'll be busy and they can meet up later. She hangs up the call after reminding him to eat some veggies. Leo asks Regina if she'll be joining them at the event later, but she says she won't. She tells Leo to have fun with the others and walks out. Leo finds her behavior weird. Multiple races that are locked up by humans inside a controlled forest gather around and discuss their plans of kidnapping the princess and forcing the humans to do their bidding. A female elf joins in on their conversation and offers to help them. She says she'll bestow upon them powers that'll surpass the humans' holy swords. The elf manifests a demon sword and empowers Bastea, the black lion, with it. Bastea tests his strength on a tree and cuts it cleanly in one fell swoop. The elf suggests they attack the princess's ship to help them stow away, and rescue their companions in the capital. The elf demands the monsters not to slay the humans, but to bring the swordsman to her. Bastia asks for her name, and the elf calls herself Sharnak, the witch of Everdark Forest. Leo sees a battleship and admires getting one for himself. After restoring his demonic army, he walks to a store to get Celia a gift. He picks a bracelet, and the shopkeeper commends him for having good eyes. The shopkeeper explains to him that it was crafted by an elf. Leo is surprised that elves and demi-humans exist in the assault garden. The shopkeeper tells him there's a compartment in the megafloat where all the demi-humans and different races are contained. The people gather at the port to see Princess Altiris. Regina uses a scope to stare at her from afar. Elfine, Sakuya, and Celia sight Leo and call him. Celia complains to him for not being specific as to where to meet at the harbor. He apologizes and brings out a keychain. He says he bought it for her and presents for always looking out for him and protecting him. Celia's mood changes and she thanks him for the present. Leo asks her why Regina isn't coming since she looks like someone who likes parties and outings. The girls tell him that Regina has her circumstances for not turning up. A girl calls out to Reselia. Fenris makes some snide remarks and it causes Celia to argue with her. Elfine separates them, and as Fenris leaves, she congratulates Celia for awakening her holy sword. Bastia and another beast folk end some guards and use their faces to disguise themselves like them on the ship. The invited members get on the ship for the commendation ceremony. Leo analyzes the ancient text and concludes that somebody must have been attempting to cover up the past. He says no historical figure was ever mentioned. Sherry meets up with him while disguised as a waitstaff, and it makes Leo wonder who told her to disguise like that. Sherry calls it the optimal outfit for carrying out her mission. She informs him that the battleship is powered by a monocrystal, and its defenses are similar to the assault garden. She says the battleship is equipped with weapons capable of flying through the air, including artillery and autocannons. Leo becomes more curious about the flying machines and commends Sherry, who is still gathering info on it. He calls Sherry back, who is about to leave, and hands her a churro. Sherry pouts since she didn't expect Leo to hand her a consumable good as a present. She teases Leo and leaves due to the girls coming his way. Leo sees Celia and the kids in their swimsuits. Tessera, the girl who handed him a handkerchief the other day, asks Leo to swim with them. Leo declined her offer, while indirectly saying he could not swim and didn't bring his swimming trunks. Celia brings out a pair of trunks and offers to give him swimming lessons. In the pool, Leo finds it embarrassing to see children being able to swim while he can't. He is being taught by Celia, but finds it hard to concentrate due to her chest being close to his face. They practice for a while. Later that evening, Regina sits on a box and watches some soldiers pass by. She wonders what she's doing and thinks about entering the ship. On the ship, Arcus, the princess's guide, is stabbed by the demi-humans and beast folk who disguise themselves as humans. He urges the princess to escape, but she is grabbed on the arm by Bastia, grabs her by the hand, and asks her to follow him, but her spirit pet animal runs off. The dark elf shows up and tells the princess about how everyone will be moved into the audience chamber. In the dining hall, some guards use their weapons to threaten the people present. They reveal their faces and are shown to be beast folk. One of them threatens to detonate a bomb apple. They submit their phones and intercom. The beast folk tell the people about how they plan on taking the princess with them. Leo tells Celia his plans before entering his shadow. The princess activates the engine for the ship on Bastia's command. Bastia tells her to head for the capital. She sees voids on the map and says they cannot go there. The dark elf urges her to crash into the void. Bastia sees her plan and tries to stop her, but he gets taken out by her. The Master Key runs to meet Regina, who is outside the ship, and relays a message from the princess to her. Regina hears about the commotion happening in the ship and chases after it to board it. Leo wonders what he is to do. The princess's pet spirit meets him, and he sees Regina. He asks her what she's doing on the ship, and she tells him that her younger sister is in trouble. Regina talks about her past, how a red light shone in the sky, and how children of the royal family mustn't be born when the star is visible. The king sentenced the princess to death, but Duke Cristalia pleaded with the king and came up with another solution. The princess was announced to be buried in the forest. Duke Cristalia took the baby home, and his wife, who had just given birth recently, took the princess and welcomed her into their family. The child grew up and became the maid to the duke's daughter. Regina confesses to being Regina Ray Oltrees. She tells Leo about how members of the royal family possess the spirit medium abilities of princess priestesses. She says it is through the spirit that the ship can move. Leo tells Regina that her sister is being held hostage by a cabal of demi-humans. Regina drops the spirit to lead the way, and they follow it. In the dining room, where the hostages are held, Elfine whispers to Celia about how one of her orbs has been watching the whole incident the entire time. She plans to find a way to intercept the detonation by 1 second. Celia sees a hairpin and picks it up. She uses the hairpin hairpin to poke her finger to draw out blood. Leo and Regina get to the control room and see bodies of collapsed men on the ground. They do not find the princess nearby, but Leo asks Regina to try communicating with her sister. She does so and introduces herself as a spirit medium who is just passing by. She reports herself to be taken away. She tells Regina to handle the ship and find a way to change its course since they are heading towards the void. Leo tells her he'll rescue the princess while she handles the ship. He breaks out from the window and jumps down. In the dining room, the beast folk are so distracted that they do not realize that Sakuya has broken free from the ropes. Fenris deals with one of the beast folk and he asks Jact, the old elf, to light the apples. Elphine uses her witch eye to reflect the attacks, and Celia destroys Jact's weapon with tiny threads. Sakuya and the girls beat up the beast folk and prevent them from using their bomb. The girls retrieve their phones and intercom, but the network doesn't go. The people check the window and see that they are in the middle of a void reef. Some voids break in, and the girls are forced to engage them in combat. Leo communicates with Celia through the cat's keychain. He asks her for her status while telling her to watch Regina's back, who will be going to try and regain control of the ship. Leo tails the beast folk as they carry the princess out of the ship. Altiris asks where they are taking her to, and the dark elf says to become a plaything for sadists. In the dining room, more void shows up, and the girls handle them. A reef opens and a brain eater appears. He easily knocks out Fenris Ice Wolves. They note it to be strong and wonder how they'll defeat it. Sakuya asks them to leave the room while she handles the brain eater. They leave her while escorting Regina towards the heart of the ship. Some other sets of voids show up. Celia uses her blood technique to easily decimate the monsters. She asks Regina to move forward. Regina reaches the heart of the ship and inputs the passcode. She synchronizes with the princess's pet, and she orders the show to turn around. The dark elf tries escaping with the princess in a chopper, but Leo holds the chopper down with his shadow. Sakuya catches her breath after defeating the brain eater, while Sherry helps the others out based on Leo's earlier instructions. She easily takes out all the voids in the room. Leo speaks outside with the dark elf. She attacks him, but he easily gets rid of them. She realizes he is the demon lord. Leo asks her who sent her, and while she is about to say it, the legendary demon weapon consumes her and transforms into a void lord. Leo attacks the void lord, but it doesn't affect it. He sees other void monsters going after the princess in the aircraft and takes them down. The void lord teleports to attack him, but he evades. Regina controls the ship's defense system to attack the Void Lord. She shoots a missile at it, and it breaks the armor of the Void Lord. The second missile she shoots turns out to be Celia. Celia links up with Leo, and he asks her to buy him time. She cuts herself with her weapon and uses her blood to cut down the voids. Leonis chants a spell and draws out his demon sword, Dainsleif. He uses his secret technique and obliterates the Void Lord with a single swing. The next day, the princess thanks the 18th platoon alongside Fenris for helping her. She asks for Leo, but they tell her that he is feeling under the weather, so he was advised to stay back home. The princess also asks for the person who controlled the ship, but the girls say she won't be coming. They relay a message to the princess which talks about how delighted Regina is to hear that Altiris is safe. Leo lies on his bed and suffers from sore muscles. He recollects the events that happened the previous day. He feels sad for not being able to gather any information concerning the goddess. Regina enters the room and announces that she has come to check up on him. She brings him an apple pie and offers to feed him. Leo asks Regina if she's sure that she doesn't have to see her sister, and she affirms. She says she got to talk to her even though it wasn't long. She pecks him on the cheek and asks him not to tell Celia. In the controlled forest, guards search for the beast folks above ground. The beast folk hide underground, but they get spotted by the humans. The guards tell them that they are arrested for conspiracy to unlawfully restrain. They tell the demi-humans that they aren't a match for them due to their holy swords. Leo wears a skull mask, gets mad at the humans for being pompous, and uses magic to turn them into statues. Leo walks in and compels the demi-humans to bow before him. He introduces himself as Zolvatus, the demon lord, and the rightful ruler of their world. He asks them to devote themselves to him, and he'll grant them a place to stay. The remaining Wolf Alliance agrees to join him. Zolvatus comes up with the name Devil Wolves for the demi-humans and beast folk. Vatus creates an underground labyrinth for the Devil Wolves to sharpen their fangs till he needs them. He says the labyrinth will be invisible to humans. He gets interrupted by a call from Celia, and she says his name. Vadis laughs worriedly and runs into his shadow. In the girls' dormitory, a lot of crows perch on the rooftop, and it worries Celia. She goes looking for Leo, but sees a maid in Leo's room. She cleans her eyes and checks again, but no one is present. She picks up her phone and sends a voicemail to him. Celia hurries to shower so that she can look for him. Leo returns to his room and changes his appearance. He walks casually through the room and sees Celia dressing up. He reacts and turns around. Regina brings their breakfast and notices the tension in the air. She asks them if she interrupted anything, but they both say nothing. They have their breakfast, and Celia keeps on reminding Leo to take more veggies. He suspects that she wants him to take them to enrich his blood for her. Regina talks about how plenty of the crowd around their dorm is. She says their dorm is being referred to as a haunted place since there's a huge black dog and a ghost maid who is spotted around at times. Celia says she saw the ghost maid in Leo's room. Celia asks Leo about his whereabouts, and he lies to her that he has been doing some solo training for their match against Fenris's squad. Celia encourages herself since she believes it to be the first match since the activation of her holy sword. The 18th platoon begins their match against the Fenris group. Fenris's team uses a decent tactic to lure out their opponents and separate them. They engage in combat, and Fenris freezes Celia's arm onto a tree. Leo uses his shadow to bind Fenris's teammate. They all go out, and the 18th platoon comes out on top. The commanders note the platoon's flaws. The 18th platoon takes their bath in a hot spring. Celia washed Leo's hair, and he wonders why she doesn't let him wash it. Leo asks if it's all right for him to be in an all-ladies bathroom, but Celia says children age 11 and below can stay with their guardian, irrespective of their gender. They recall their errors in their recent battle against the 11th platoon. They reassure themselves. In a certain dungeon, Nephekes, the Void Lord, picks up weapons and puts them inside a big crystal. He talks about how it's almost time to awaken the goddess of prophecy. An abandoned assault garden comes out of a rift into the sea. The 18th platoon is called to the administrative bureau and is shown footage the bureau received at around 3:40 p.m. They see it's the 3rd assault garden, the city that vanished 6 years ago. Leonis notes the 3rd assault garden to be the hometown of Riselia and Regina. Elfine notes that the pace at which the 3rd assault garden is moving will reach them in 7 days. The commander informs them that distress signals have also been fired on 2 occasions. The platoon members suspect it to be survivors. The commander gives them the mission to investigate how the distress signal was sent, and they are to search for survivors. They are also to inspect the power plant and shut it down. The mission time they are given is 3 days. Elfine asks the commander why their team was chosen. The woman says it was the administration bureau's idea. She admits part of the reason is because Celia has a history with the case. Another reason is due to their platoon's excellence. Celia accepts the mission, but worries about Leo. The commander says Leo can sit it out, but Leo refuses, and it makes Celia vow to protect him. They are told to depart the following day. Elfine tells them about the Sacred Order's insignia amongst the ruins of a city far away from them. Leo speaks to Blackus and Shari and informs them of how information regarding anything from 1,000 years is unavailable. He plans on figuring out who is responsible for the act. Blackus says he'll keep watch of the 7th Assault Garden, and Leo agrees. He asks Sherry to accompany him on his mission. Leo sees the bow tie on Blackus's neck and asks him about it. Blackus says he got the gift from Sakuya. The aircraft carrying the platoon members takes off. Elfine advises the students to feel free to take a nap. Regina and Celia argue about who is to act as a lap pillow for Leo, but he tells them he is fine. Regina brings out an ear pick and lies Leo on her lap before cleaning his ear. Leo enjoys the sweet sensation, and he remembers when Roselia rested on his lap. She informs him that she'll be leaving soon and will be reincarnated in the future. Leonis promises to find her, and she says he is confident. Leonis says that a demon lord doesn't go back on his word. She asks him to promise her something. Leo opens his eyes and sees Celia looking down at him. She says she switched places with Regina. Their aircraft gets close to their destination and lands due to the thick fog coming from the 3rd assault garden. Celia says she and Leo will head for the central garden to investigate the power plant, while Elfine, Regina, and Sakuya are to pinpoint where the distress signal came from. They plan to check in hourly. Elfine sends one of her drones to follow Team Celia. As they part ways, Leo summons Sherry from a distance and uses telepathy to tell her to protect the 3 girls. Sherry feels bad that she doesn't get to serve her master, but he says she should treat the people he asked her to protect like his subjects. Celia stops and points to destroyed places, saying the places used to hold buildings. She recalls her moments there and feels bad, but Leo encourages her not to. Her void detector goes off, and they are shot at with light beams. Celia falls to the ground, and they see a colossal void flying their way. An elf respawns on the 3rd assault garden. She comes from 1,000 years in the past. She looks around and doesn't find trees or plants. She enters a broken store and takes some clothes to wear. The elf is known as Arla Kirlacio, who has been sent to the future. She believes the goddess is going to be reborn in the 3rd assault garden. She notices the island to be moving and sees an aircraft landing not too far away. Arlie calls it a dragon. She hears a voice behind her and sees the Void Lord. He wonders what Arlie is doing in his world. She asks him if he also reincarnated like her, and he affirms. He says he has a different objective than her. The Void Lord guesses her objective, and they engage in combat. The Void Lord says he'll ask her to leave. A colossal void appeared behind her, and startled her. Leonis sees Celia, who is trapped under a huge rod, and uses his shadow to make her fall to the floor beneath. He engages in combat against the colossal void. He sees the monster to mimic angels, hence he brands it a fallen one. Leonis plans to show it true sorcery. The girls hear sounds and notice them coming from the direction Team Celia went. Elphine notices her orb to have disappeared. The girls head to their destination. Leo fights the fallen angel and uses several sorcery on it. He uses a high-level gravity spell on it and throws him some other spells till he defeats the fallen angel. Leo goes to the subway to meet Celia. She tries to get up, but he warns her not to. Leo says it'll take her a while to recover fully. They see holograms that bear the crest of Crystalia, with their leader being Celia's father's right-hand man. He tells her that they do not possess a physical body, but they still rush to her side as soon as she reaches. They explain that the distress signal fired by them wasn't for rescue, but to issue a warning. The leader says, if things continue the way they went, then the disaster of 6 years ago will likely occur, and the 7 Assault Garden may be overtaken by a stampede. He says a new Void Lord has appeared. The leader tells them that the Void Lord has melded itself with the city's power plant, and now it's amassing energy. Leo worries about Celia's health, so he proposes that he find a place for him to rest. The leader of the ghosts says he has prepared a mansion for her. They bring a vehicle, and it surprises them that ghosts can drive. Leo doesn't trust the speed of the vehicle, so he summons skeleton horses and uses them to pull the vehicle. The girls walk quite a while, and they notice a figure. Regina rushes to approach the figure, but Sakuya pulls her back. The elf hero brings out her sword to strike them. Sakuya tells the 2 girls to stand back and engage in a sword battle. She stops the moment she points her sword at Arle's neck. She says, if Arle wasn't wounded, she'd have lost. Arle falls to her knees and her back is exposed to bleeding. The Void Lord watches the girl he is trying to bring back talk in the power plant. Leo and Celia talk in the vehicle. She asks for his blood and takes some from his neck. A call interrupts her, and she speaks to Elphine. They explain the circumstances they were in and how they managed to pull through. Elphine tells them that they found a survivor. Celia tells Elphine of the possibility of a Void Lord hiding in their city. They end their calls, and Celia asks for more blood from Leo, but he refuses to give her. He shows her a cloth and calls it the true ancestor dress that can convert a vampire queen's mana into physical strength. He advises her to use it wisely, since it depletes mana rapidly. Leo stores the clothes in her soul and tells her that she'll be able to put them on if she imagines herself wearing them. Celia wonders why he hadn't given her the clothes since, but he explains that she wasn't ready, unlike now. Leo says he doesn't want to be caught by surprise again. He hands Celia 3 skeleton keychains and says they are good luck charms. Regina stitches Arle's wound and tells her not to move too much or the wound will open back. Arle is praised for being able to hold her ground against Sakuya despite being wounded. Sakuya brings Arle some clothes, and they introduce themselves. Arle tells them of the monsters she fought, and how she mistook them to be the allies of the Void Lord. Elphine asks Arle questions, since she isn't recorded on the 3rd Assault Garden's database. Elphine answers Arle's questions by telling them that they are from the 7th Assault Garden, and they come to where they are to check out distress signals. Arle says she has been entrusted to kill a goddess. She tries to get up after thanking the girls to leave, but her stomach growls. Sakuya offers her some rations, and Elphine says they are bound to protect Arle. Sherry watches from afar. She calls Arle the last to train under one of the 6 heroes. Sherry wonders what Arle doing in the current world. One fallen angel returns to deliver a report to the Void Lord. The Void Lord wonders who defeated the colossal void. Celia and Leo get to Celia's mansion. They are welcomed by more ghosts. Leo sees a chair and sits on it. It reminds him of his chair in the past. He brings out a bone and starts polishing it. Celia is urged to go upstairs. She checks out the broken rooms, and her memories come flooding. The ghosts see her as she is sad in her father's room, so they all touch the ground and recreate a precious memory of her and her father. She holds one of his books, but she gets interrupted by another voice. The Void Lord stands in the room and talks to her. Celia asks if he is a survivor, and he is surprised that she mistook him for a human. He feels insulted, and he fires a flame attack at her. Leo senses what happened and runs upstairs. Ciela lay sprawled on the floor after being attacked by the Void Lord. Celia dreams of the past. She recalls asking her father why she can't go with him to fight the void. He says that until she awakens her holy sword, they can fight together. He reminds her of the fairy tale he read to her. Celia wakes up and sees 3 strange figures standing before her. The Void Lord thinks he went overboard, but he sees 3 strange figures who stand in the way of Ciela after claiming to have made it in time. Nephekes talks to the skeleton and chants a level 6 spell to to obliterate them, but Leonis hits him with a fireball. Celia sees Leo by her side and asks who the skeletons in front of her are. Leonis tells her that they are the good luck charms he gave her earlier. The skeletons introduce themselves to Celia. Nephekes eliminates the flame around him and talks of how he'd have died if he were a normal human. He fires a fire spell at Leo, but Leo uses ice to overpower his flame spell. Leo asks him who he is and what he is doing at their location. Nephekes talks about Saint Terrace, playing her role in devouring the offerings. He calls Saint Terrace the goddess vessel and says, the goddess has come back to life. Nephekes enters a portal he created, and Leonis tries stopping him from going with his shadow spell, but Nephekes slaps the spell off. Celia meets with him and asks for confirmation, but Leonis says he isn't sure. The ground trembles and cracks not too far away. The symbol of the Sacred Order appears in the sky from the heart of the third assault garden. The skeleton advised them to flee the building. On their way toward the ground, the ghost calls Leonis' attention to the enormous creature coming out of the crack of the heart of the megafloat. Leonis notes the giant woman to resemble Tiras, the hero of resurrection. Around her, multiple colossal voids fly. The voids sing the hymn of the Sacred Order. Elphine gives reports to the Administrative Bureau. She tells her platoon to find a way to rendezvous with Celia and Leo. Terrace sends hordes of fallen angels all over the assault garden. The people combat the monsters, but they regenerate. Leo attacks one of the monsters on the head, and it works. He tells everyone to keep hitting the head of the voids. They see the giant Terrace heading their way. Leonis creates a giant level 10 spell and attacks Terrace, but it doesn't work. Not too far away from the battle, Elphine uses her witch eye to check for motorcyclists they find and walk towards them. Arla sees the attack and calls it a level 11 spell, Low Nemesis. The girls ask each other about what's happening outside, but Elphine continues hacking into the bike system. As soon as the attack stops, Leo tells Celia to protect him. Celia and the three skeletons fight the fallen angels and give Leo enough room to chant his spell. Leo leaps into the air and chants his spell. He removes his demonic sword to strike Terrace, but it starts resonating. Leonis hears Roselia's voice asking him if he intends to kill her with the sword. Leo hesitates for a moment, and it gives Terrace room to counter his demonic sword attack. Leo is pushed backward and impaled by arrows of light. He falls to the ground while bleeding from his chest. Terrace creates another massive amount of magic circles with the intent to fire attacks. Celia sees Leo on the ground and sees Terrace preparing to attack. She screams and transforms into a full vampire form in the red dress. She sends an attack that crippled Terrace. Celia flies to Leonis and picks him up. The three skeletons battle the fallen angels around Terrace. As Leonis lies unconscious, he remembers the conversation he had with Roselia. Roselia asked him for a favor: if she reincarnated into another being entirely. She says he should kill her, but he finds it hard for him to decide. She tells him that she does not doubt that the demon sword she gave to him will guide him to his fate. Leonis barely remains conscious. He tries commanding Ciela to suck his blood and run away, but she places her hand on his impaled chest and returns blood to it. Celia pumps blood back into Leonis' heart till he wakes up. He remembers the last request given to him by Roselia. Leo gets up and picks up his black sword while watching Terrace regenerate. Leo asks for a lining of her dress from Celia, and she gives it to him. He applies it on his chest, and the wound completely heals. Leo vows to vanquish the Void Lord. He says his power must have waned a bit, but he still has mana left. He beckons to Celia to back him up. The ghosts of Crystalia ask Leo to convert their souls into energy sources with his sorcery power. Leo agrees to their plan and starts sucking in their souls, but he changes his mind and summons an army of undead. He allows the souls to make use of the skeleton as bodies to fight against Terrace. Leo asks Celia to give them weapons, and she grants them spears. Terrace gets up and sends hordes of fallen angels at them. The skeleton soldiers and Celia fight the fallen angels. Elphine hacks into the cycle and sees Arle outside. She asks the girls to take her along with them to the battlefield. They disagree at first, but after seeing her determination, they agree to her plea. Leo creates a red orb that grows bigger based on the souls it absorbs. The girls ride their bikes and head towards the battlefield. On their way, they see three fallen angels charging at them. Elphine takes over their bikes with her witch eye, while Regina and Sakuya kill the monsters. Celia loses her composure, and one of the skeleton knights catches her. He tells her not to always rely on her vampire abilities. She thanks him and charges back in battle, with the determination to protect Leo. Leo keeps on growing the Orbi, but he sees Terrace getting ready to use the Low Nemesis spell. He worries due to not gathering enough mana in time. Terrace fires off the Low Nemesis spell, but Leo and his friends get protected by bubble shields. Leo continues gathering mana into the red orb The girls race on their bikes and see how far they are from the action. A fallen angel sneaks up on them and tries killing them all with its beams, but Sherry uses her whip to kill it off. Leo has increased the black orb to a very huge size and plans to use it to finish Tiras. The monster creates magic circles to use Low Nemesis. She sees Leo siphoning the mana from the black orb into his sword. Tiras lifts a building and throws it at him, but Celia dashes and destroys the building into bits. Tiras sees Leo completing the chant for the demonic sword and creates a huge shield around her. The girls on their bikes charge at full power and they fire their attacks at the shield. They break the shield and Leo uses his demonic sword to obliterate Tiras. After the battle, the fog clears and the Knights of Crystallia rise and leave the earth. Their leader appreciates them for giving them another chance to fight. He tells Celia to look over the House of Crystallia. Leo returns the 3 skulls into the shadows. The girls rush to Celia and hug her. Leo sees Arle and looks surprised. Rescue aircraft arrive on the 3rd assault garden. Fenris comes out from one of them and urges the medical team to attend to the wounded people. On their way home, Leo looks at Arle and knows it was her attack that destroyed the protective barrier of Tiras. He wonders what she is doing in their current era. Celia speaks to him about having a frown on his face, and he corrects it. He asks her about the book she's holding, and she tells him it's a book that had the fairy tales her father usually read to her. Leo asks her the kind of story in the book, and she says it is a story about a demon lord. She read the contents of what the demon lord would do. Leo disagrees with some of the contents. He notes that the true legend of the demon lord and the divine beings is no longer passed down. Celia turns to him and says he reminds her a little of the demon lord from her story. He says he doesn't breathe fire from his mouth. Leo asks her what happens to the demon lord at the end of the story, and she says he gets defeated by the hero. He wonders what kind of story it is. Celia takes her bath, and Leo has a meeting with Blackus and Sherry. He asks them about Nephekes, and Blackus tells him that Nephekes was a retainer of Master Azrael, one of the 8 demon lords. Leo says he never trusted Nephekes, and the next time they see him, they'll make sure to get him to cough everything he knows. Sherry tells Leo to be wary of the elf hero. He asks Sherry what Arle is doing in the current era, and Sherry tells him that Arle has been detained in a room at the airport's medical facility. He asks Sherry to figure out Arle's objective. Sherry complains indirectly about Leo giving Celia a dress and not getting her anything. Celia walks into the room with only a towel, and it makes Leo fluster. She asks him to allow her to take his blood, and he says she should suck it slowly. Celia gets impatient and falls on Leo while she sucks his blood. Regina wishes for the next day to be a free day so that she can prepare something sweet for Leo. Sakuya trains outside while wanting to surpass Arle. Elfine goes through her records and reads about the stampede and the reboot of the 3rd assault garden. She tried looking for the connection between them. Arle wakes up in a clinic and sneaks to take her sword. She believes her mission isn't complete. The news of an explosion at the airport reaches Elfine. Leo plans to expand his territory until every last human empire belongs to him. He plans to re-establish his demon empire and make all humans bow at his feet. He walks with Celia across the street. He sees a girl fall and prevents her from doing so. Her popcorn flies and lands on his head. The girl apologizes, but Leo doesn't mind.